There's a real disconnect between what it is that the norms of self-determination are, what international law states about it, what practitioners believe about it, and what communities aspire from it. So I think this is the discussion that needs to be had, and there has to be a way in which all of these disparate bits can be brought together into something of a coherent whole. The self-determination conflicts are very much locked in a zero-sum game. Communities aspire for a state, states fear communities, and in the end you have a system by which the sovereign state is the only player in town, and the sovereign state is extremely worried about the extent to which sub-national actors can undermine or threaten it. Essentially, the map of the world that we have is really only recognizable for the last 100 years or so, which really in the context of humanity's existence on the planet is a mere speck, if even a speck. So essentially the map is dominated by the vision of the sovereign state, and the sovereign state typically outside Europe is really a consequence of lines drawn upon maps where white men foot have never trod, but mountains, rivers and lakes have been given to various different communities. That's something of a quote from Lord Salisbury in 1890. And essentially it's what gave us the sovereign state, very much a European vision of what governance should look like, that's been now transported across the world. In actual fact, the histories of communities in various parts of the world are very different, and the types of governance mechanisms they've had have been very different. Obviously, it's passé to say the sovereign state has had its day. The sovereign state is here to stay. But effectively, the sovereign state is no longer in a position where it can really overcome the big challenges. The big challenge on climate change, the big challenge on migration, the big challenge on economic growth. All of these need actions that go well beyond the realm of the sovereign state. And all of these point to the need for a pragmatism that cuts across boundaries. In our approach at Minority Rights Group International, we look at the world as 16 sub-regions. These sub-regions are essentially a reflection of global histories where communities have interacted, not always peacefully, with each other, but which really have given you some kind of coherence and some kind of mirroring of populations across what we recognize as national frontiers. So when we think about sub-regions, we look at Africa, for instance, as at least 5 distinct sub-regions. This is also backed by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. When we look at Asia, we distinguish Southeast Asia from South Asia, which we distinguish from East Asia. And when we look at the Middle East, we first of all reject the terminology Middle East, which is really very much a European vision of a corridor to India. But we think of it much more in the context of the challenges that exist in the Gulf states, separate from the challenges in West Asia, separate of course from the challenges of North Africa or the Maghreb. And then similarly, when you look at Europe, you have to look at Europe in terms of the hemispheres, the East and the Central and Eastern, the Central and Eastern, and then the Western. And I think that looking at this map of the world in terms of sub-regions allows you to see the synergies that exist in terms of populations, allows you to, I guess, depoliticize the impact that a group of people have in terms of capturing the sovereign state and making it do its bidding, and effectively sets us up to address the big challenges of the 21st and 22nd centuries, which is really the question around how we cooperate in a pragmatic manner to ensure that we safeguard life on the planet in terms of the environmental crisis, but also create the mechanisms for a sustainable peace.